More protests in Minnesota today after a woman was shot and killed by an ICE agent earlier this month. A pro-ICE group marched on the Minneapolis City Hall. That group was met with anti-ICE protesters who were also downtown. This aerial footage showing the large gathering. There have been protests every day since the Department of Homeland Security ramped up immigration enforcement in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul by bringing in more than 2,000 federal officers. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says the Minnesota National Guard is standing by in case local agencies need help.